Alright guys, welcome to today's video. Today we're going to be discussing a beginner fishing guide for anyone that's looking to fish in Pennsylvania. Whether you've never fished before or you're just now getting back into fishing, now's the time of year where people start to get the interest again. So I decided to make a guide for everyone to be able to watch, and hopefully it'll help you guys catch some fish. So let's get into it. Alright guys, so the first thing we're going to start off with is gear. And gear is kind of complex because there's so many options and there's so many different things that you can buy. So the first thing that I would recommend personally for everyone is just, a simple 6'6" medium action rod. If you get a nice combo, I'd recommend, like an Ugly Stik, because they're just so durable. It's a tried and true company, and I'd recommend that just because it's simple. You can catch almost any fish in Pennsylvania using that setup. On the reel, I'd recommend having 10-pound monofilament. That should cover the majority of species that you'll be fishing for in Pennsylvania. So for your terminal tackle, it's going to be hooks, bullet weights, split shots, bobbers, lures, soft plastics. So what I'd recommend for all of them, having bobbers and hooks, you can catch multiple different species. You can catch almost any species in PA just with a simple bobber, split shot, and a hook and a worm. So yeah, I'd recommend having all them, different sizes of them. It's good to have a little bit of variability because you never know what you're going to be catching or fishing for. So for other gear that you should have with you, I'd recommend having pliers, scissors, sunglasses that are polarized so that way you can see better in the water if your budget allows. And also if your budget allows, get another rod or two. I personally think that fishing is a lot easier whenever you aren't constantly retying. So what I like to personally do is have a specific rod for bass, a specific rod for panfish and trout, and then another rod for heavier species like catfish. And you never know what's going to be biting, so I like to take out all three rods. You guys will see in future videos. I usually have my bass rod with me, my ultralight setup for a smaller fish, and a heavier setup just in case I'm out for bigger fish. Another thing I'd obviously recommend is having a bait bucket and a bubbler. You could get them online for like $2 probably for a bucket, and you get rechargeable bubblers now, and that's great for whenever you have like minnows and stuff. So for baits and lures, live bait I think is always king in Pennsylvania. If you have some minnows or some night crawlers, you can catch almost anything, so they're always nice. Whenever you start targeting specific species, wax worms are obviously great for trout. For bass, just worms. Soft plastics are great for bass. Lures like crankbaits, stuff like that. So for catfish, cut bait and chicken liver, they are the most common in our area, and they're awesome for catching catfish. I mean, they work. That's the most important part. So let's talk about finding spots, because that's, half the battle is finding a spot. The other half is getting to the spot and getting your line wet. You can always look online on the PA Fish Commission website and see the bodies of waters that they manage. On there, you'll get to see the regulations and stuff, which is all very important. And besides that, asking people, your uncle fishes, something like that. Hey, do you know any good spots around here? If you're out fishing at a public body of water, you can ask someone, hey, do you know anywhere else I could go out fishing? I'm new. The thing about fishing is most people you'll run into, I'd say 99% of the time, they're going to be willing to help you out in any way they can. So it's always good to ask. And another way you can always look, and if you're not afraid of rejection and you live in a good place, you aren't in a sketchy area, you can go knock on doors. Look on Apple Maps at night. Look at a couple ponds. Say, hey, I'm going to be driving out to this lake. Along this way, there's 2 houses that have ponds in their backyard. Knock on the door, be very respectful. Respect goes a long way. Knock on the door, ask them, hey, do you mind if I went out fishing in your thing? And my personal advice is always offer to help out with something. Hey, do you need help around here? I'd love to help you out for an hour. Just go out fishing for a little bit. We practice catch and release. And that will, make strides. I've personally done it multiple times. And I've gotten to fish some really cool ponds that I never would have fished if I didn't do it. So it's always a good way to talk to people, and you get to know people, and it's a good experience. So now we're gonna be talking about the common species here in PA. So you have large and smallmouth bass, sunfish. There's a whole array of them. crappie, uh, catfish, pickerel. You will find carp, muskie, perch, and some other species that are kind of mixed in there in different bodies of water. But those less common ones that I just mentioned, you aren't going to find them in every body of water. There's certain ones that hold them. So I'd say targeting a select few species is, a huge thing for finding fish and having a successful fishing trip. Um, if you're going out, I'd say target, 2 to 3 species. Like I said before, that's why I like to have 2 to 3 rods. And whenever I go out, I have a game plan. I say to myself, I'm going for bass, I'm going for sunfish, and I'm going for crappie. So whenever you do that, you bring out the right gear. You're targeting them instead of, lobbing up a Hail Mary and hoping that you catch a muskie whenever you're using a night crawler. Your odds aren't going to be super high, and you're probably going to be, a little bit more upset of the results because you aren't catching them because you aren't targeting them. So that's my thing, is go in there with a game plan and target specific species. Still have it open to saying, I might catch a catfish even though I'm out for, crappie, stuff like that. So you found where you're going to go. You know what species you're going to be targeting. Now it comes to the third variable, which is where do you cast? How do you fish it? So my best advice, because as a beginner, I'm going to infer that you are most likely going to be fishing from the bank. Fishing structure and drop-offs and the edge of weed lines are 3 very easy things you could do from the bank, and they produce results the same way they do in a boat. You don't need a boat to catch fish. And, that's a huge thing a lot of people, considers that they need a boat to catch fish. You don't need that. Fishing structure, if you see a tree that's down, if you can see in the water, like maybe there's like a log, maybe there's a rock pile, maybe there's a big rock right there. Sudden drop-offs. If your lake or pond that you're fishing has geographical, I believe it'd be topographical imaging by the Pennsylvania Fish Commission, you could see where those drop-offs are. You could cast out there, and you'll be dropping it right at the edge where the fish are kind of sitting, because they like to sit in deeper water or higher water, depending on the time of year. And then fishing the edges of weed lines, fish hide in there because it's structure, and they use it as an ambush point where they can come out. If you're dragging something past it, they're going to attack it and go back in there. So that's the best way to fish that. Another good place to be fishing, specifically in the spring, is fishing parallel to the shore. Come April, whenever the water temps and pH start to get a little bit higher, fishing along the shore is an awesome spot. A lot of the fish come up closer. The water is warmer in the shallows, so they like it, and it's easier to see the fish too. So it's always nice to parallel fish the shore if it's possible. So this is obviously a very bare and base level guide. I'm hoping that this helps out a few people, whether you're brand new to it, you've been fishing for years and stopped, or maybe if you've just been fishing for a while and looking for some tips. With that all being said, hopefully this helps you guys out, and the best way to learn how to fish is just to get out, try out a few different lures, try out different baits, and cast out, and it will be very helpful, and you'll figure it out along the way too. I can only tell you so much through a video. It's just like anything in life, practice makes perfect. So I hope that you guys have a successful fishing season. If you're new to it, hopefully this helped you out. And I'm wishing you guys all the best this season. I'll see you guys in the next video.